Do you want to hear about the time I was the most scared in my whole life? Probably. I mean, there may have been other times where I was more terrified. But the time that sticks out the most in my mind, where I think I was probably the most scared I'd ever been. Tammy and I were living in Illinois. I graduated college. I was in seminary, working on my first master's degree, and it was late at night. The older three boys were in bed. Clay was still up. He was maybe 18 months, maybe 2 years old. And we lived on one side of town, and the church where I preached was at the far west end of town. It was where the main drag met a highway that went from central Illinois down to St. Louis. That's an important part of the story, this main highway. All the kids are in bed. I'm working on what's basically like your master's thesis. It was my major research project. It's one of those papers where the bibliography is 25 pages long. And I'm on a deadline, I'm on a crunch, and I'm at home, I'm trying to type in my bibliography, and I realize I got about a dozen books that are at the office. I gotta go bring home, get it formatted. It's a terrible process. I take Clay with me out in our van that we bought in northern Illinois before I even went to college. 1991 Chevy Lumina looked like the space shuttle when it came out, and it was a beauty. Dark blue. The dashboard was from Nita Crystal. If you saw it, you know I'm not lying, man. They were like the space shuttle. This car was so old, the heater core ruptured, and I wasn't putting any money into it, so I just bypassed it, the manifold. The windshield wipers quit working while I was in college, so I bought this stuff called Rain-X, and I would apply that about once a month. The door handles on the sliding doors only opened from the outside, so the kids couldn't get out once they were in. The windows quit working. I mean, you get the picture. Like Elvis Presley saying, you know, another child born in the ghetto. This car was ghetto. One thing I forgot to tell you about the car, which will come in handy in a moment, has to do with the ignition. So I'm preaching in this little church where 20 years before, there was a church member that thought you can't have a kitchen in the building. So the fellowship hall, good 75 yards at the bottom of the hill from the church building. Open the key, go to my office, grabbing my books, and I hear out on the highway what I think is on the highway is a semi running over a car. It is hellacious noise. It is metal crushing metal. It is carnage. It is death. It is chaos. I walk out my office door with a stack of books, and our van is gone. Literally, it's gone. I look down the hill, and I see our van sideways, up in the air, through the fellowship hall. I dropped the stack of books. What I forgot to tell you about the car is it didn't need a key anymore because the lock cylinder was wore out. Little 2-year-old Clay got out of the car seat, stood behind the wheel, started it, the gear shift was on the side. It was so old you didn't have to put your foot on the brake, no safety stuff. Drove down into the fellowship hall and crashed, and I ran down there. His little throat was red where it hit the steering wheel, and he was in shock. You know, I've shared that story with dozens of people, and no one ever asked me, Craig, what was the major research paper you were writing? It was on truth. I went to my advisor. I said, I want to write a paper on absolute truth. He said, I recommend it. I don't think it's going to pass, basically. That's a hard... Now, this is 25 years ago. I was scared when Clay went through that fellowship hall, but I am more afraid today for our culture than I was 20-something years ago when I wrote that paper. You guys think you know a story, but I don't know that you know the whole story. The story of the emperor's new clothes. I know it's hard to see. It looks great on your computer at home. They need to change the bulb in here. There's the emperor in front of the crowd. You think you know the story, right? You remember the story? Hans Christian Andersen wrote it, but did you know he plagiarized it? from someone who plagiarized it. So he read the story from like the 14th century of the Spanish version. The Spanish version plagiarized from the continent of India a story that was written in 1200. This story is old. How does the story go? You remember it. The king, he's vain. He's all into fashion. Nobody can satisfy his need for new clothes. A couple of con men come into town and they tell him what? We're going to sew you an outfit that only who can see. Do you remember? Smart, educated people. Anyone that can't see it is what? Foolish and ignorant. But they're con men, and so they spend days at their loom and they pretend like they're weaving this thread, and then they pretend like they're sewing it together, and then they present it to him, and of course the wife looks at him and she doesn't want to be thought to be stupid. Oh, it looks great, honey. Yeah. And of course all the town knows about it. He goes out in the town and he's, strutting his stuff, I guess, and everyone's like, oh, yeah. And then what happens at the end of the story, guys? A child says what? You got nothing on! You naked, boy! That's where we are today. Fisher and Urey, two guys that wrote through Harvard University, wrote about conflict and negotiation. And one of the things that they talk about is when you're in a conflict or a negotiation, people are talking about stuff that's on top of the table. We're talking on the surface stuff. What they encourage is find out what's below the table. Find out what people are really interested in. People will talk about everything but what the real underlying unspoken issue is, but that's what they're really concerned about. Now let me ask you a very serious, very important question. Can you talk about lightning rod, controversial topics in an unbiased way? Are you able to use your critical thinking and think through an idea without becoming a snowflake and melting down? Can you do that? Is that something that is able to do? Now, occasionally people ask me what my view is on transgender issues. This is not a sermon on transgender issues. I am indifferent to the individual. I have no right to tell people what you can or cannot do. I'm indifferent to the individual. I am concerned about culture. Now I want you to think about this for just a moment. I'm not here to champion it. I'm not here to condemn it. I want you to look at this example because I think we've been looking at it all wrong. In fact, I think it's trendy, it's politicized, it's controversial, it's polarizing, but it's become a litmus test of what we can and cannot talk about in our culture. Okay? We judge each other based on how you come down on this topic. And I've not read this anywhere else. I've not heard anyone say this. But I don't think it has anything to do with gender. In fact, I think gender arguments are a red herring. They're a distraction. In fact, I think if you think transgender is about sexuality, you've been distracted. I think we all have. I think it's like the emperor's new clothes. We're looking in the wrong direction when we talk about this topic. And this topic ties in to John chapter 18 immensely, where we are today. I believe both sides polarized, missing the point. What do I think the point is? Again, I'm not here to judge, I'm not here to condemn, I'm not here to champion, I'm not promoting. I'm making a cultural observation that I think is very important for all of us. What do I think the main point is? If you and I listen to me carefully, because this is something that keeps me up at night. If you and I can reduce truth to a personal preference, then hear me clearly. Allah, Buddha, Jesus, and Marxism are equal choices and valid on the table. if I can reduce truth down to my personal choice, then there are all options equally valid. And I no longer have the validity to say that Jesus is the only way, when truth is reduced down to preference. Now, I'm here to tell you this morning that I'm afraid, and I believe the greatest threat to our generation, Betty, that's from you to me to Gunner back there, our generation, people who can hear us right now. And Janai, I think you're older than Gunner, that's why I pointed to him. But you two can argue that out. Anyone that's within the hearing of my voice, our generation, the greatest threat is to protect the idea of truth with a capital T. I am convinced. Now, the transgender thing, it'd be different if you said, I feel this way. I feel like I'm a woman. I wish I were a woman. That's one thing to feel that way, or to want to be that way. But it's different to say, no, you have to agree with me. I really am this way. The idea of denying a biological fact is just one example. But it's a trendy example. It's just one example of how reducing factual truth to a personal preference. You can't identify as whatever you want. It just doesn't work that way. But it's not an attack on the family. It is an attack on faith in truth. Is what I'm saying coming across? You understand what I'm saying? We are reducing objective reality down to anything we want it to be. Anything that presents falsehood as factuality erodes the concept of a corresponding truth. Corresponding truth is, if I say it's raining outside and it's not, that doesn't correspond to the truth of the reality. You understand what I'm saying? There are facts, like you look at a bottle of Clorox bleach and it says don't drink it. That might be true for the guy at the factory, but why can't I drink it? Go ahead, try that. That just doesn't correspond to reality. Guys on the swim team, the girls' swim team, the guys on the soccer team, I don't care. Because I'm not a sports fan. No, now, if I had a daughter, I would be uncomfortable with boys coming in the girls' locker room. There's no doubt about that. But the guys on the girls' swim team, it's not sexism, that's not deviance. The core issue that we're missing, the emperor's clothes that we are missing, is it is an attack on absolute truth. To say I'm something that I'm not, and to expect everyone to believe it. Again, I am indifferent to the individual. If that's what you want to do, go knock your socks off with your high heel shoes. Don't make me agree with it. I'm indifferent to the individual. I'm concerned about the culture. Are you hearing me clearly? I'm not here to say what you can or cannot do. I'm saying what's corroding culture right now. And we've lost the ability to speak truth without being hate speech. And we've lost the ability to say, this is true and this is false. And if we don't get this fixed, there will not be a church in 50 years in this country. Again, I'm not talking about anything other than the absolute truth. Are you following me? We've been upset about the wrong things as believers. You know, we say, the guy on the girls' swim team, well, it's not fair. We say it's not natural, it's not normal. How about we say it's not reflecting truth? Because I don't care what you think is fair. I don't care what you think is normal. I don't care what you think is natural. I care what you think about absolute truth with a capital T. And I'm convinced if we don't turn this ship around, there won't be a ship to sail. So the biggest threat to the church isn't the guy in our Argentina that wins the girls' beauty pageant and goes on to become Miss Universe. That's not the biggest threat to the church. It's relativism. It's pluralism. It's the idea that all subjective ideas have to be accepted. It's the idea that we're rejecting absolute truth. That's the area where we need to focus on, because listen to me, church. Without absolute objective truth, you and I cannot claim that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and we cannot say he's the only way. If there's no objective truth, then Allah, Buddha, Marxism, it's all the same. Well, I forgot to put the text in, so we'll just have to get your Bibles out. Sorry. You can read along with me, or I trust you get on your phones, but you probably on Facebook Marketplace right now, or looking at your lunch menu or whatever. Oh boy. All right, I'm in John chapter 18, and I'm beginning in verse 28. Now, again, I'm not talking about being tolerant. I'm not talking about intolerant. I want us to look at how dangerous it is to deny truth. Because I really believe that making truth whatever you want it to be is about power and control. It's about, I don't want to submit to someone higher than me. I want to be the highest authority and determine what reality is, what truth is. I want to be in control. So here's where it all fits in together. John chapter 18, verse 28. Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas. Remember, we were last week with the high priest and the former high priest, and they've got the kangaroo court. And they lead him to the governor's headquarters, the praetorium. It was early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled. Isn't that interesting? They're more concerned about being ritually, ceremonially unclean than they are condemning an innocent man to death. I think that's probably the ultimate in hypocrisy, right? They don't want to be unclean, but so that they could eat the Passover, the end of verse 28. So Pilate went outside of them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" And they answered, well, if this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you. They can't even come up with something worthy of having him killed, right? Capital offense. We want to kill the guy, but, you just got to take our word on it. If he wasn't a bad guy, really bad guy, did really bad stuff, you wouldn't be here, okay? So, verse 31, Pilate says, "Well, take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." And the Jews said to him, "It's not lawful for us to put anyone to death." Well, we know that's not true. The Old Testament has plenty of references to stoning people to death, beheading, hanging, killing. What's going on here? Well, there's a new sheriff in town, and it's called the Roman oppression. Rome took the authority away from the high priest and the religious people to kill people because why? It's causing chaos. All these revolutionaries, all these troublemakers, they keep killing them, they keep having riots. Pilate doesn't want to deal with that. He's a long-term politician. He's been in this area 14, 15 years. He's tired of dealing with all the chaos. So what do? They take away the ability for them to just kill anybody, and you got to come to Rome. So that Rome can determine, yes, you can kill this person because it won't cause a lot of problems, and we can go on. It's all just about smoothing out the wrinkles. So they're kind of lying here. We can't do it, not legally. Well, you can't now that Rome is in control. It's not lawful under the Roman occupation. Take them, judge them for yourself. It's not lawful. Verse 32, this was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken to show by what kind of death he was going to die. Jesus has said time and time again, when the Son of Man is lifted up, when the Son of Man is lifted up, Jewish people did not crucify. That's how Rome killed its criminals, its political enemies, the bad people. The Jews preferred stoning. Jesus predicted he'd be lifted up. So this is all together. Now, notice what's going to be a real problem for a lot of believers between now and November. Now and November. How do we manage our earthly loyalties to our heavenly, spiritual loyalties? What I want you to be looking at here is the heavenly, spiritual kingdom that Jesus is focusing on. Verse 33, so Pilate entered his headquarters, called Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" What's going on here? I'm looking at you. They handcuffed you, they tied you up, they smacked you around, they dropped you off on my doorstep to kill you. Are you really the king? Would they treat their king like this? Jesus answered, "Do you say this on your own accord, or did others say about me?" Now, when you get pulled over by the police, the last thing you want to do is get sassy with them, right? I mean, when they pull you over for speeding and they say, "How fast were you going?" you don't say, "Faster than you," or "None of your business." "I pay your salary, big boy. Put down the badge," right? Jesus is in front of good cop, bad cop. John doesn't put good cop's story in right now. Good cop is the wife, right? Pilate's wife, if you know the whole story, she had bad dreams. She's like, "Let this guy go." Pilate's like, "Let me remind you who I am here, Jesus," right? Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? I don't know what you guys got going on. Your own nation, the chief police, delivered you over to me. What have you done?" Now, here it comes. This is a hard verse for me. I'm patriotic. I love my country. I love being an American. But I have to make sure that I love my spiritual kingdom more. Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from the world." What do I do with that? I got to balance that out. I've got to listen to that carefully. One thing I know for sure, Jesus is not coming back to establish a kingdom in Jerusalem to rule for 1,000 years. It's not in the Bible. And this definitely says, I'm not worried about the world. I'm worried about the spiritual. I'm worried about the heavenly. I've got to balance myself. How do I interpret this, apply it, still be passionate about the world around me, but not be obsessed with worldly affairs? It's all temporary. And Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world. I have a spiritual kingdom, a heavenly kingdom. That's what I'm worried about." Then Pilate, verse 37, so you are a king. Jesus answered, "You say I'm a king. For this purpose I was born, for this purpose I've come into the world." To do what? Bear witness of the truth. Truth with a capital T. Objective truth. Truth that corresponds to reality. The word here in the Greek, he says, "I was born to bear witness to the truth." Aletheia. It means steadfast. It means trustworthy. It means something that is real. Jesus stands before Pilate supporting and promoting the idea of truth. I came into this world to bear witness that there is truth, objective truth, real truth. And I'm telling you, I'm worried because somehow over the last so many decades, chisel away here, erode there, drip it there, dilute it there, water it down here and there. And now, apparently, all truth is the same. That's a self-defeating claim in and of itself. Pilate's baffled. Really the king? I'm not a Jew. What's going on here, Jesus? Right? Jesus drops this truth bomb on him. And how does Pilate respond? I love the response here. Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" Right? And then after this, he goes back outside to the Jews. "I don't find any guilt in him." People that try to object to or deny absolute truth always appeal to what? A truth statement. It's self-defeating. There's no such thing as absolute truth. Is that a true statement? You want me to believe that you just said, do you see the circle that goes around it? No, there's no such thing as truth, but you just made a claim about truth. Do I believe that or not? It's self-defeating. It's self-sabotaging. It just contradicts itself. So, Jesus stands before Pilate. I don't find anything. So, Pilate, the politician here, fails in a major attempt at compromise. Okay, I got to satisfy the crowd. Let me follow your tradition and release someone. Pilate, you've got a certain custom. I should release one man at the Passover, right? A pardon, like a presidential pardon. Okay? Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? And they cry out, "No, not this man! Give us Barabbas." Now, Barabbas was, your English text will say, a robber. The word here is lestasis. It's a revolutionary. It's a criminal in a political way, where they're like doing a guerrilla warfare. It's not a robber. It's an insurrectionist, is what it is in the Greek. We look at, oh, he's a robber. So we're thinking like carjacker, like shoplifter, right? How bad can it be? No, Barabbas is a real insurrectionist. And they like, no, give us Barabbas. Let's turn him loose. When we deny truth, we rob ourselves of objective reality. We owe our future generations this much, and that is, we defend the idea, we defend the notion, we defend the concept that truth, listen to me, exists and it can be known. That there is such a thing as absolute truth. Truth is the hinge pin. It's the foundation, it's the bedrock for the world we live in, for culture, for society, for the family, for the church, for the core of our existence. Now, I got about another 45 minutes to go here, if you want to bear with me. Wipe the sleep out of your eye, drink the rest of your coffee. No, let me wrap up with this, because there's only so much ground I can cover. I want to suggest that you do some reading of your own. And we're only together for a couple hours on Sunday morning, and that's it for the week. But if this is an idea that interests you, I recommend you read books by people like William Lane Craig, Alvin Plantinga, Ronald Nash, people who write about Norman Geisler, people who write about books under the category of Christian apologetics, defending the truth. Apologia, defense in the Greek. Not, oh, I'm so sorry. It means a defense. People that write books that can help us understand the threat, that can help us to articulate and help us have ownership of why faith is based on the idea of truth. Paul Copan is a genius when it comes to this. Those are the type of people I want you to get on your Kindle, get on your thrift books, go to Amazon, go to the library, whatever. Because if we eradicate objective truth that corresponds to reality, we eliminate the validity of truth claims. If we go along with culture that says, yeah, you want that to be true, go ahead, whatever. If we allow that to go, then we get rid of the validity of truth. God is bigger than truth, amen? Mm-hmm. But how do we communicate the idea of God, of the necessity of submitting to God, of there only being one true God, if we give up This is the challenge for our generation. This is the challenge that we have, standing up for objective truth in the face of relativism, the idea that it's all relative, it's all subjective. It will either be the last of our legacy, or it will be our lasting legacy.